I've got my brown flood consistency icing and some espresso food coloring. I want to get like right down into the tip here. All right, so I'm gonna just put a little bit of this food coloring on the end of a really small paintbrush. All right, and we're just gonna paint some lines up the inside of our bag. Okay, and then we'll fill our bag with our flood icing. And we'll see how this turns out. So I always have a damp cloth off to the side of me where I'm working, and you'll see I'm often wiping my scribe on it, or I'm wiping the tip of this bag on it, because sometimes you'll get like a little string of icing hanging off of the tip of the bag that you need to get rid of. And then that little spot that I added in some icing needs to be kind of manipulated so that it doesn't have pointy bits sticking up. And then I'm going to fill in the centers with some squiggly lines because they are pretty narrow, and if I go in right away with my flood icing, because I do tend to use a bit of a looser flood icing, then as it dries I can get some hollowing in the center or some cratering. So if you use a thicker flood icing, sometimes you can avoid this step, but I have a hard time getting a thicker flood icing to dry really smooth on top, so That's why this is my preferred method. So I'm gonna take my piping bag. I'm gonna start by doing kind of circular motions because I want to get a bit of a knot in my wood. So we'll do a knot there. Maybe I'll do one here. And then now we'll go up and down motions to fill our cookie and get that wood grain look. So normally when I'm flooding a cookie, I'll kind of go in more of a circular motion filling the center. But for this one, we're going to focus on going back and forth to achieve that wood grain look. And let's do a little knot over here. Oops. Almost went over there. Okay, so now we'll just let this dry before we carry on to our next step, which is going to be the greenery and the florals. So I'm starting with an outline consistency in a green, and I'm just going to add some vines going up the cross. Kind of side to side and crisscrossing. Into where some of the flowers will be. And now I'm going to take my stiff consistency in a bag with a piping tip Wilton 102, and I'm gonna put in some of the larger florals. So the wider end is toward my body, the narrow end is facing away from me, and I'm pretty much flat against my cookie here. I'm gonna apply pressure and do a little semicircle out and away. I have a cloth beside me that I'm just wiping my tip clean in between petals. I'm gonna press that down a little bit. Okay, same thing, so the wide end toward me, and I'm gonna do another little petal, like a semicircle up and away, and one more. And that's just gonna give a bit of a ruffled effect on the back side of the floral. I've got my outline consistency in brown, and I'm gonna just do some little lines for the center, the inside of the cookie. And now, back to my stiff consistency. I'm gonna this time have the wide end of my tip against the cookie, and the narrow end, which was previously facing away from my body, is gonna be tilting toward, not completely facing me, but more kind of straight up and down almost towards the ceiling. And I'm gonna come apply pressure and just a little bit of a wiggle. And now here I wanna bring this petal, kind of attach it to the previous petal. So you can kind of see the inside there comes together. Sometimes I will take a little dry paintbrush and just kind of pull these petals closer to me, but they're fine today. We're gonna do another one down here. So we're gonna do the exact same thing. We have the narrow end of our piping tip facing away from us and the wide end facing toward us, and we're gonna do those 3 little semicircle motions. And we'll take that brown outline consistency and do the little details in the center of the flower. Crusty icing off. Okay, I'm gonna just wipe off the tip with my damp cloth. And now we're going to tilt that narrow end that was away from us, tilt it up toward the ceiling, and slightly kind of ruffle back and forth, and then pull it toward the other tip. Okay, so you can see the inside there. And then up in this corner, we're gonna do a flower that hasn't opened as fully. And so for this one, we're going to start with the wide end toward us and the narrow end toward away from us. And we're going to, without lifting our bag off of the cookie, we're gonna apply some pressure in a bit of a semicircle like we did, and then we're just gonna come right in front of that, and then again right behind it, and then press down. So we're just gonna get a little, almost like an unopened little rosebud. And we're gonna do one of these flowers down at the bottom, similar to these two, but slightly smaller. So I'm, instead of doing the 3 petals that I did before, I'm just kind of gonna do one. Take my brown for the center. Bunch of little thingies. Don't know what they're called. And then facing that narrow end up toward the ceiling, I'm going to do the outer petal, just like that. And there's a little bit here I'm gonna press up into that other petal. Okay, Now I'm going to take the green that I have in an outline consistency that we used on the vines, and I want to just put teeny tiny little leaves that connect up to our flowers. So these just, there's no piping tip, they're just cut. And I'm just gonna apply some pressure as I pull away, lifting up and away, and just kind of have a little bit of that greenery just connecting onto those flowers there. It's really helpful to have a turntable. If you don't have one, I highly recommend it. Makes it a lot easier to kind of get it all angled. When I'm doing flower cookies, I'll use this one as the guide for this one, but there's going to be minor differences, and that's just the nature of the cookie. I think if you were to go look at a garden that's full of the same flowers, each one would look slightly different, so I think it's okay. Okay, next we're gonna do some of the little curly bits off of the vine. So I'm just gonna sporadically add these things in. And a few little leaves, it looks like I did on the last one. So just like when we were putting the little bits of greenery going up to our flowers, you're just applying pressure as you lift and pull away. I did put little leaves on this one, but I think I might leave it. I kind of like being able to see that knot in the wood grain there, so I'm just gonna leave that. I'm gonna do bigger little leaf there and here. And I could take my scribe and try to kind of smooth some of the little ripples and waves out a little bit more. Okay, let's add a couple of these twigs. It looks like I was doing some grapes or something. A lot of the time I don't actually know what I'm doing, but they look like they're grapes to me. So let's do some little grapes in here. So we'll just do some twigs. Kind of coming out from anywhere. Do some here. And then I have a deep purple in an outline consistency. And I'm just gonna do dots with a little bit of space in between them. And then as it kind of dries and crusts over, we can add in some more overlapping dots, but we don't want them to blend together. So for now, I'm gonna just leave a little bit of space in between there. I'm just kind of mimicking the shape of a grape bunch, so it'll be a little bit wider and thicker down at the base, and then it'll get narrower toward the tip. And then up here we'll do some kind of just in the background. Okay, so we can add a little bit more to those after they've crusted over. In the meantime, let's do some of our little yellow flowers. So here I've got a stiff consistency with a Wilton 101. So this is the exact same shape as the last petal tip that we used. It's just smaller. So we're gonna have one little rose bud coming off over on this side. So we're just gonna do a little background petal and then one in the front that kind of wraps around and connects. And then we're going to do the same thing up here. I don't want to cover that knot in the wood too much, so I'm going to go off to the side of it. And there we go. We'll take that green just like we did the last time and kind of come up onto our flower just a little bit. And then let's take, so this is a stiff consistency icing. I'm just gonna clean my tip out a little bit because it's sat for about 5 minutes, so it sometimes the icing can kind of dry and then you have a hard time pushing it out. All right, so this is a Wilton 352. This is the shape of it. And we're going to be having it so that these 2 points are up and down. And so we're going to touch down against the cookie with that lower point, apply some pressure, squeeze, and then pull away. And I'm going to do another one right here. Apply pressure, squeeze, and pull away. And right here, applying pressure, squeeze, and pull away. I had one in here. Here by my grape bunch. And it looks like there's one down here as well. So how big or small the little leaf is, it just depends on how long you are applying pressure for. And then if needed, you can kind of pinch the tip to get like a little bit of a pointier tip. Okay, so now I have an outline consistency with a pink icing, and on this cookie you can see I've kind of done all these little, I don't really know again what it would be, hangs and dangles. Can you see? This is such a rough tutorial, guys. I don't know if this is gonna focus, but it kind of hangs and dangles. I don't know, I just think it's kind of pretty to have a bit of that kind of sprinkled all over the cross. So I'm doing it a little bit messy without too much particular attention to detail. I'm just kind of taking that overline consistency and bunching together a bunch of little dots and then in clusters, and then I'm also going to do just some more sporadic dots around. So kind of have it dropping in there, do a little bit up here. some kind of coming up this corner of the cross. And shooting out this way. And then we have a bit of a bunch kind of in here. Dangling down this way. So now that the first ones have overlapped or have crusted, you can kind of overlap now and come on top of them without having to worry about it all blending together, so you can get more of that three-dimensional grape appearance. Okay, right, I think that is pretty well done.